I'm sorry, the lawyer said, staring down at the papers my father had brought with him, but this can't be right. My father, Richard Ellis, smiled like the room belonged to him. Then read it again. 16 years had passed since he cut me off at 14 and left me on Aunt Vivian's porch with one duffel bag. 16 years since he told everyone I was unstable, ungrateful, and too difficult for decent parents to raise. Now he stood at Vivian's while reading in a tailored grey suit, tapping one finger on the conference table like he was waiting for a waiter to fix his order. I had not seen him in years. But the moment I walked in, he looked me up and down and said, "You're late, Mara, still making everything about you." The relatives along the wall went quiet. I took off my black coat slowly and sat across from him. Then Mr. Calder, Vivian's lawyer, reached for the lock on the conference room door. That was when my father stopped smiling. The room smelled like coffee, old wood, and expensive perfume. Vivian would have hated it. She hated staged grief, hated whispering relatives, hated men who walked into rooms expecting women to make space for them. But my father loved rooms like that. He stood near the head of the table, beside my mother Elaine, as if Aunt Vivian's estate were some family meeting he had called. My cousins avoided my eyes. An uncle I barely remembered leaned toward his wife and whispered, "I didn't know Mara was coming." Richard heard him and laughed softly. "Of course she came," he said. "Vivian always rewarded drama." I kept my hands folded in my lap. Mr. Calder glanced at me, then at the sealed cream envelope in front of him. Vivian's handwriting was on it. My name was written across the front in dark blue ink. Beside it sat another folder. ELLIS Original Records. My father noticed me looking. "That woman filled your head with poison," he said. "But let's not pretend she was your mother. She was my sister-in-law before she became your replacement parent." Elaine touched his sleeve. "Richard." "No," he said louder. "Everyone here remembers what happened. Mara was cut off because she made our home impossible. Vivian took her in because Vivian liked rescuing broken things." A few people looked down. I looked at Mr. Calder instead. His face had gone pale. Richard pointed at the documents. "So let's stop wasting time. Family assets should stay with family. What did she leave me?" I leaned forward. "You should sit down before you embarrass yourself." His eyes sharpened. "You don't silence me in my own family." "This stopped being your family," I said, "the night you left me on her porch." He took one step toward me. Before he could speak, Mr. Calder stood, turned the lock on the conference room door and said, "No one leaves until I explain why Mr. Ellis's paperwork cannot be real." The sound of that lock threw me straight back to the night I learned what being cut off really meant. I was 14, standing in the rain outside Aunt Vivian's townhouse with one duffel bag at my feet and my school backpack digging into my shoulders. My father didn't even get out of the car. My mother stood beside me under a black umbrella, dry and stiff, like she had been sent to deliver a package. "Mom," I said, gripping the wet strap of my bag, "what did I do?" Elaine would not look at me. "Your aunt wanted responsibility," she said. "Now she can have it." I asked one question. From the driver's seat, Richard lowered the window just enough for me to hear him. "You searched through things that didn't belong to you." "It was Grandma's account," I said. "She left it for me. Why was it empty?" His jaw tightened. Children who spy on adults don't get to enjoy adult protection. Then Aunt Vivian's front door opened. She stood there in a silk robe, barefoot, her hair pinned messily on top of her head. She looked from me to my bags to my mother. "Elaine," she said slowly, "why does Mara have all her documents?" My mother's mouth opened, then closed. Vivian stepped into the rain and took my backpack from me. Inside were my birth certificate, school records, insurance card, and a folded bank statement. Everything that proved I belonged somewhere had been packed like evidence. Vivian unfolded the statement under the porch light. The balance read 0. 3 days earlier, it had still been my grandmother's savings account. Behind us, my father's car pulled away from the curb before Vivian could reach it. That night, Vivian made me tea I couldn't drink and put fresh sheets on the guest bed. She kept her voice soft when she told me, "You are not leaving this house unless you want to." But after midnight, I woke to her voice in the hallway. Richard, you don't discard a child because she found a number on a statement. His voice came through the phone, low and sharp. Stay out of my finances, Vivian, unless you want people looking into yours. The hallway went silent. When Vivian came back into the room, her face had changed, not angry. Afraid. By morning, she had enrolled me in a new school, called a family attorney, and told me to unpack every bag. But I kept thinking about that phone call. If Aunt Vivian was rich, powerful, and fearless in every room I had ever seen her enter, what did my father have on her that made her whisper instead of fight? By the time I turned 18, Aunt Vivian had taught me how to stand straight in rooms where people expected me to shrink. That night, the ballroom of the Whitmore Hotel glittered with chandeliers, champagne glasses, and donors who smiled at Vivian like she was royalty. I stood beside her in a navy dress she had chosen, holding a clipboard for the charity gala she ran every spring. Then my father walked in uninvited. My mother was on his arm. The conversation nearest the entrance thinned first, then the silence travelled across the room, table by table, until even the string quartet seemed quieter. Richard kissed Elaine's cheek for show, then spread his arms. Vivian, he said warmly, you didn't think we'd miss Mara's big night, did you? Vivian's fingers tightened around her glass. You weren't on the guest list. Family doesn't need an invitation. He turned to the nearest donors, smiling like a proud father. Mara has recovered well, hasn't she? Vivian's generosity did wonders. Some teenagers need firm consequences before they learn gratitude. The words landed in front of everyone. Not abandoned. Disciplined. Not discarded. Corrected. I felt every head turn toward me. Before I could speak, Vivian stepped to the microphone at the front of the room. Since Richard has brought up Mara, she said, her voice clean and bright, I'd like everyone to know that she is not only my legal ward, but my intern, my right hand tonight, and the only honest Ellis I know. A ripple moved through the ballroom. Richard's smile tightened. Vivian continued. And this year, our newest scholarship fund will carry the name of Mara's grandmother, because money meant for a child should never vanish into adult pockets. Elaine's wineglass tipped, red spilled across her sleeve. Richard did not move for 3 full seconds. Then he clapped once slowly. How generous. Later, near the service hallway, I saw him corner Vivian beside a stack of empty trays. His voice was low, but I caught enough. Keep implying theft, he said, and donors might learn about that loan you signed. Vivian's face went still. Richard leaned closer. Your signature, my name, bank records, you'll lose everything. I stepped behind the wall before he could see me. That was the first time I understood his grip on her was not just shame, it was paperwork. After that night I stopped waiting for my parents to come back and started saving everything. Emails, bank notices, half-finished notes Vivian left on her desk, any sentence that made her close a folder too quickly. When I finally asked her what Richard had done, she only said, some truths need proof before they become truth. I believed her. Until one night I found her in the study, crying in front of the fireplace. A stack of old loan notices sat beside her. She fed the first page into the flames. And before the paper curled black, I saw my father's signature burning at the bottom. Back in the conference room, my father's face had lost its practiced calm. Unlock that door, Richard said to Mr. Calder. Now. Mr. Calder did not move. This is no longer a standard will reading, he said. The document you submitted this morning creates a legal problem I cannot ignore. Richard gave a short laugh. A legal problem, be very careful. Accusing me in front of witnesses is slander. Mr. Calder opened the folder in front of him with both hands. Aunt Vivian's official will was filed with this firm years ago. It was witnessed, notarized, and stored here. Nothing about it is unclear. Then read it, Richard snapped. I was prepared to, Mr. Calder said, until you arrived before the reading with a new codicil. The room shifted. One cousin whispered, a new what? A codicil, Mr. Calder said. is an amendment to a will. This one claims Vivian signed away a large cash distribution to Richard Ellis and granted him immediate access to her private archives. My father lifted his chin. Vivian changed her mind. No, I said. Everyone looked at me. I remembered Vivian's final weeks, the dim hospice room, the nurse logs clipped by the door, the camera above the townhouse entrance, the way Vivian's hand shook so badly I had to hold her water glass for her. She couldn't sign anything 3 weeks before she died, I said. She was unconscious. Elaine pressed a hand over her mouth. Richard turned on me. You don't know what she did when you weren't there. I was the only visitor allowed. Mr. Calder slid the sealed envelope across the table. Mara, Vivian left this for you. My name stared up at me in her handwriting. I opened it carefully. Inside was a small brass key, a list of account numbers and one sentence. When he comes for the papers, let him ask in front of witnesses. My pulse went cold. I placed my phone on the table and pressed record. Richard saw the screen light up. You pathetic little girl, he said. She poisoned you against your real family. Elaine reached toward me. Mara, stop, don't destroy your father. I looked at her hand until she pulled it back. He destroyed himself, I said, when he forged a dead woman's signature. Someone gasped. Richard lunged for the folder. Mr. Calder's assistant stepped between him and the table, gripping the documents to her chest. Mr. Ellis, Calder said sharply, I have already contacted the probate judge's clerk. This codicil matches irregularities in older financial records Vivian preserved. My father went white. I lifted the brass key from the envelope. I know what this opens. Mr. Calder led us to the archive room beside his office. No one spoke as he unlocked the first door. I unlocked the second cabinet with Vivian's brass key. Inside were 6 labelled binders, a small fireproof pouch, and a letter in Vivian's handwriting. Mr. Calder pulled on gloves before touching anything. The first binder was marked, Mara's grandmother, original account records. The second, Richard ELLIS loan guarantee. The third, THRATS and correspondence. My father stood behind me, breathing too loudly. Those are private, he said. Mr. Calder looked at him over his glasses. Not anymore. The truth came out 1 page at a time. When I was 14, I had not misunderstood anything. My grandmother had left me a savings account for school, housing, and emergencies. Richard had drained it to cover payments on a failed private business loan, but that was only the beginning. The loan documents showed Aunt Vivian's name as guarantor. Her signature was on every page. Except it was not her signature. Mr. Calder laid Vivian's verified signature beside the loan guarantee. The difference was obvious even before he explained it. The V was wrong, the spacing was wrong, the pressure of the pen was wrong. Richard had forged Vivian's name, used my grandmother's money to hide the payments, and when I found the empty account, he cut me off before I could ask anyone else. Elaine sank into a chair. No, she whispered. Richard, tell them that isn't true. My father said nothing. That silence moved through the room like a door closing. Mr. Calder opened Vivian's letter and read only the section she had marked for witnesses. Richard threatened to accuse me of participating in the loan fraud if I exposed him without complete proof. He also threatened to challenge Mara's placement with me and drag her through court as an unstable child influenced by money. I chose to gather records until the truth could survive him. My throat tightened, but I did not cry. Vivian had not been weak. She had been building a wall around me with paper, dates, and patience. Mr. Calder continued through the files. There were bank statements, copied checks, old emails, phone logs, handwriting reports, nurse records from Vivian's final weeks, and screenshots from the townhouse security, camera showing Richard had not visited her on the date listed in his so-called codicil. Then came the final piece. The forged codicil my father brought that morning did not just ask for money, it gave him access to Vivian's private archives. He had not come only for inheritance. He had come for the evidence. I turned to him then. For years he had lived in my mind as a locked door, a raised voice, the man in the driver's seat while I stood in the rain. But standing there, with every lie spread open in front of him, he looked smaller than I had ever imagined. Elaine began to cry harder. "Richard," she said, gripping the arms of the chair. "Say something." He looked at the binders, then at the lawyer, then at me. Still nothing. I reached into my purse and removed a folded sheet sealed inside a plastic sleeve. Its edges were browned from heat. Vivian had burned a stack of old loan notices years ago. But I had saved one. I slid it across the table. I kept one too. For the first time that day, my father looked afraid of me. Mr. Calder closed the binder. Vivian's valuable leaves Richard and Elaine Ellis nothing. Mara Ellis inherits the townhouse, Vivian's shares, and full authority over the scholarship foundation named for her grandmother. The forged codicil will be turned over to the probate court along with these records. Richard stepped forward. "You can't." Security opened the archive room door before he finished. He tried to grab the folder anyway. The guard caught his wrist and pulled him back. Papers fluttered across the floor. My cousins stared at him like they were seeing the real man for the first time. By the end of the week, Vivian's statement had gone to the relatives who once repeated my father's story. By the end of the month, donors knew why the scholarship fund existed. His business partners stopped returning calls. The probate filing triggered investigations into forgery, elder financial exploitation, and the old loan fraud he had buried under my childhood. Elaine asked to speak to me alone in the hallway after the reading. "I was scared," she said. Her makeup had streaked beneath both eyes. "I did what your father told me." I looked at the woman who had stood under an umbrella while I stood in the rain. "Fear explains silence," I said. "It doesn't erase 16 years of letting people call me unstable to protect a thief." She reached for my hand. I stepped back. That was the last time I let either of my parents stand close enough to touch me. Months later, I reopened Vivian's townhouse as the headquarters for my grandmother's scholarship fund. The first award went to a 14-year-old girl leaving an unsafe home. It covered housing, school expenses, counseling, and legal help, because Vivian had taught me that survival should come with structure, not just sympathy. I kept Vivian's sealed envelope framed behind my desk. Not as a wound, as proof. The truth can wait quietly for years and still arrive exactly when it is needed. The night my parents cut me off, they thought they had thrown me away, but 16 years later, I was the one holding the door while the law came for them.